Yo guys, Punkrat with another video. Classic WoW is right around the corner. Folks are gearing up for battle, stocking up on Red Bull, theory crafting to oblivion, and getting ready for the out-of-body experience that is Classic WoW. At the end of that journey lies some of the most legendary raiding trials we've seen in the history of the game. The pinnacle of raid experiences in Classic WoW, the crown of Classic so to speak, will always belong to Naxxramas. Naxxramas has been engraved in the halls of infamy. Infamy is the right word to describe it. It's probably the most infamous raid of all time, arguably in the history of Warcraft and even in MMOs in general. A big aspect of that, I would say, is due to the fact that everybody knows about the original Naxx from Classic, but very few have actually experienced it, or even stepped foot inside the Scourge Necropolis. In late 2006, less than 1% of the player base actually killed Kel'Thuzad, the final boss in Naxxramas. Less than 1%, imagine that. And the few who did have the privilege to experience Naxxramas in its original glory were only able to scratch the surface, only killing a few bosses. Killing half of the ghoulish citadel was considered elite at the time. This is due to a couple factors, like the lack of sophistication within the gaming community at the time, the lack of technology and computing power and network infrastructure, the short time that Naxx was actually available before TBC was released, and other factors as well. Because of that, many people's excitement for the re-release of Classic WoW is founded in the notion of getting a second shot at experiencing the original Naxxramas. Now, as we prepare for Classic's rebirth, let's go back in time and go over what cemented Naxxramas as the greatest raid in the history of Warcraft.
You have no idea what horrors lie ahead. You have seen nothing. The frozen heart of Naxxramas awaits you.
The greatness of Naxx starts before you even enter the raid itself, before the raid was even opened up to the heroes of Azeroth. It has a rich history deeply rooted in Warcraft lore, within the story of the Lich King. It was initially an ancient Nerubian ziggurat, where Anub'arak and his army of undead warriors resided. The citadel was eventually overran by the Scourge, and under the force of Frostmourne, the subterranean necropolis was lifted through the dirt and transformed into an airbound vessel of death. There was a mighty mage who went by the name of Kel'Thuzad. He was a member of the Kirin Tor, the Wizard Council of Dalaran. Kel'Thuzad had secretly grown curious of the dark arts. He was eventually outed by his compatriot mages in the Kirin Tor, and was exiled. This, however, just made him venture even deeper into his interest of cryptic magic, where he founded the Cult of the Damned, becoming a key agent for Arthas. Once Arthas Menethil officially claimed Frostmourne and became the Lich King, Kel'Thuzad was then resurrected as a Lich, where he was responsible for spreading the plague across Lordaeron. Kel'Thuzad was tasked with commanding the Scourge of Lordaeron from the floating necropolis, known as Naxxramas. The Scarlet Crusade, Argent Dawn, and the Forsaken had been fighting to weaken the Scourge, and they had eventually weakened Naxxramas' security measures just enough to open the gate and grant access to the hovering citadel. It then becomes our task to venture in as heroes and finish the Scourge once and for all. The stories from both Arthas and Kel'Thuzad very closely resemble the story of Anakin Skywalker from Star Wars. They were powerful faction leaders or council members that turned to the dark side. The old lore was extremely captivating, and it's a large part of what pulled in players into Azeroth to begin with. This rich Warcraft history is the first of many aspects that make Naxxramas so special. Once Naxx hit live servers, it was not merely another raid to storm into, it was a lived event in WoW's history. The lands of Azeroth were under siege by floating necropolises similar to Naxxramas, accompanied by necrotic shards below, which spawned masses of Scourge invaders onto the sacred lands which we call our home. We were tasked with the duty of cleansing our once peaceful territories from the ghoulish nightmare that is the Scourge. And of course, just as you'd expect from valorous heroes such as ourselves, that's exactly what we did. We exorcised the undead, gained reputation with the Argent Dawn, paid into the war efforts with gold coins, arcane crystals, and nexus crystals, and joined the battle against Kel'Thuzad and his minions. This story made the whole experience that much more immersive, but Naxxramas was much more than that. It hit every single mark, from fantasy to visuals, architectural design, and gameplay design. So let's start off with visuals. So firstly, the color palette is incredibly unique, and I don't think I've ever seen it replicated. The main colors used in Naxx are green and gray, mixed in with a tertiary color of purple, blue, and maybe pink. You would think, what is this, Scooby-Doo? But it just works. The green slime that runs throughout the entire dungeon's gutter system and septic tanks, the gray stone that provides great contrast throughout the dungeon, it works as a simple backdrop, a color base to accentuate the saturated, stylized colors that are used, and the purple, which is almost baked into the lighting itself, giving a purple, pinkish feel throughout the entire dungeon. If you look at the stones throughout the entire raid, they almost have like a purplish, pink-gray color to them. The blue is most prevalent in the cloth banners hanging as mantelpieces across the entire dungeon as well. And of course the strong blue tones in the final chambers, which is the frigid Frostworm lair. The artistic composition of Naxxramas is totally unique in the entire lineage of Warcraft raids. On that same line, let's talk architecture, starting by the exterior, the dungeon entrance itself. In the west of Eastern Plaguelands, just south of Stratholme, there's mushroom fields infested with undead abominations. Lying there ominously is a ziggurat. It's not just any ziggurat though, it's unique from all the other structures in that immediate area. And if you walk up to it, you can see a green platform with a glowing mist atop of it. This is a transporter. Of course, we know Naxxramas is a flying necropolis. This is the transporter that teleports you up to the raid in the sky.
Ready to beam up, Jim?
Energizing.
Fresh meat.
Once teleported in, you find yourself under a stone structure. You climb up the surrounding stairs only to feel a wide range of emotions. Amazement, confusion, fear to name a couple. You're immediately overwhelmed with multiple different gates leading to vastly different quarters. Not to mention Kel'Thuzad's voice echoing throughout the place itself, instilling fear into your heart. Especially if you attack his pet cat, Mr. Bigglesworth. Then you will definitely incur the wrath of Kel'Thuzad.
A curse upon you, Windows. The armies of the Lich King will hunt you down. You will not escape your fate.
So there's the Plague Quarter, populated with ghouls, ectoplasmic ooze creatures, bats, maggots, eyeball tentacles, and creepy bosses. The Construct Quarters, a lair of mad science. Twisted, putrid amalgamations, mad scientists, creatures of horror, mated paradox to the vision of the light. The Arachnid Quarter, where we find Anub Rakan and his arachnid minions, topped off by the Queen Spider herself, Maxina, sitting in her web. The floor in that boss room is just that, a web, perched over a seemingly never-ending abyss. And of course, the Military Quarter, which holds all of the Death Knights, risen to battle by the Lich King himself. And with the final council of antagonists, the legendary Four Horsemen. There is no guidance, just 4 quarters. Go where you think you stand a chance. Unlike we see in the modern raid designs today, where you're essentially working through a linear system, killing bosses in their listed order. Naxxramas has no deemed kill order structure. You make your own path. The path within the quarters themselves, while unique in their own right, are more linear, but they tend to contain overlapping layers, foreshadowing what challenges await you ahead by peeking over the platforms or peeking back over the trials you have already overcome, each quarter with its own distinct features and ambience. The structure of each quarter was impressive to say the least, which only added to the mood which was on display. The most interesting part was the gutter system which ran throughout the entire raid. You could use these gutters to navigate your way through the wings, dropping down and avoiding paths and enemies as you saw fit. And best of all, each wing towards the end was connected by the slime river. You could swim beneath the caustic slime through a tunnel and find yourself at the later end of the next quarter. This opened up opportunities to clear the bosses or progress the bosses in a more unique way. If you spent your first raid night knocking out all of the easy bosses and earlier bosses in a couple wings, you could then start the next night, let's say by clearing the spider wing and using the gutter system after you've killed Maxina to swim over to the opposing wing and head straight to that quarter's last boss, rather than re-clearing through the trash that you already cleared through the night before that's respawned. The raid could be done in so many different ways, which added to the immersive feel, since you were making decisions about what you wanted to do on the fly every single night, as well as adding to the replayability of the raid itself, rather than feeling like you're in a theme park type raid as we see today. Once all 4 quarters have been cleared, you unlock the final chamber, the Frostworm lair. As you enter the frigid lair of Kel'Thuzad, the hall to his den is guarded by Saffron himself. who was slain and reborn by the Lich King as well. Saffron was an agent of the Blue Dragonflight, who was resurrected as a Frostworm after Arthas killed him. Saffron's remains are scattered throughout the entire room once you enter that final boss lair, and as a welcome to the final chamber of the raid, his body reforms in an incredibly epic animation, showcasing the unholy power of the Scourge. The final room of Kel'Thuzad is beyond epic. It's a symmetrical room surrounded by portal den structures draped in cloth. If you walk up close to the portals themselves, you can see landscapes beyond. And in Kel'Thuzad's first phase of his boss encounter, he's pulling undead hordes from those landscapes through the portals to fight in the throne room alongside him. The raid encounters in Naxxramas were trend-setting. Every previous raid in Classic WoW had very simple boss mechanics for the most part, with the odd exception, like AQ40 for example, where the only truly unique fights are Twin Emps, Viscidus, and Cthulhu. Naxxramas on the other hand, pretty much every single boss, all 15 of them, were unique and challenging encounters which put your raid group to the test. From Resuvius and having to use mind control mechanics, Anubrakan tank kiting, the Hygen dance, Gluth zombie kiting, Thaddeus polarity shifts, Maxina web mechanics and tank avoidance coordination, Lotheb raid coordination, and of course, the toughest fight in Classic WoW, the Four Horsemen. Not to mention the last two bosses, Saffron and Kel'Thuzad, who in their own right will challenge you to your wit's end. Attached to those epic raid encounters is everyone's favorite part, of course, the bounty, the loot. The items in Naxxramas are something else, with some of the most iconic tier sets available. Also, do I even need to go there? The Corrupted Ashbringer, friends. The Corrupted Ashbringer. Take a look at these tier sets. They're some of the best artistically executed armor sets that we've seen in the history of World of Warcraft. They were also hard to get, which added to their infamy. The raid itself was difficult, the loot drops were scarce, and each tier item that dropped was actually a token which needed to be redeemed with a quest, which asked you to collect gold, high-end profession materials, and scraps that dropped off of Naxxramas trash. There were cloth scraps, mail scraps, plate scraps, leather scraps, which your guild would be hoarding for that purpose. This meant when you finally claimed your reward, it was more rewarding than anything you can experience in the modern game. Each tier item was a grind, nothing was given. In Classic WoW, there's a story behind every reward. In conclusion, it's really all about the depth of experience. Naxxramas hits all notes, from lore, the experience, the visual stimulus and ambience, the challenge, to the epically fulfilling rewards that you get for conquering those demanding challenges. It's a timeless experience, and you'll still get every bit of the greatness of this experience with the re-release of Classic WoW in 2019. You're in for a treat, my friends. It's time to go back in time and claim the vanilla experience that may have eluded you back in 2004 to 2006. I hope this video gets you hyped for what's waiting for you in WoW Classic, because even with how much of a propaganda piece this is for Classic WoW and Naxx, I think Naxxramas will blow your expectations out of the water if you've never been there before. I've cleared Naxx many times on private servers and touched a bit of it during original vanilla, but I'm still as hyped as you can get to re-enter it once again. It's time to slay the Lich King's underlings, boys. Let's remove the Scourge from our lands. Again, I hope you guys enjoyed this one. It was awesome to analyze my favorite raid of all time, and with that, make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, of course, you know the drill, soldiers, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.